You want to know someone the nursing homes hate to see show up at their door? Well, it's this guy. This guy is a state nursing home inspector, and if you've ever wondered who keeps tabs on nursing homes to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, well, it's this guy. Federal regulatory rules that govern nursing homes state that nursing homes are required to undergo a full inspection of the facility every 9 to 15 months. But how is that done? Well, each state has a team of nursing home inspectors that carry out these inspections. And let me tell you, when those state inspectors show up at the nursing home, it's a big deal. This investigative process is called a survey. And when the whole process is going on, it takes about 3 to 4 full days. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what happens during an annual survey so that you can learn more about the nursing home that you're considering for your loved one. Before we begin though, you need to understand that there's 2 types of survey. The annual survey, which is the one we're discussing in this video, and a complaint survey. The annual survey is much more extensive than the complaint survey. An annual survey looks at everything in the nursing home, while the complaint survey, that's typically an investigation into a complaint that the state received about a specific event. And we'll talk about a complaint survey in another video. So let's talk about Nursing Home Inspection Day. Well, it starts off just as any other day at the nursing home. Employees are getting to work, talking with each other, and getting ready for a regular day at work, possibly saying something like, "Whew, I sure am glad the state inspectors aren't here today." And yeah, that is the case for them for a little while. But before they know it, the state inspector shows up, he walks in, and he announces that it's inspection time. And he's not alone. He's got his whole team with him. Here's his team. Now keep in mind, state inspectors are not required to tell the nursing home when they're coming to do the inspection. In fact, it's just the opposite. They're required not to tell them. They do this so that they can maintain the element of surprise. Surprise! They don't want the facility to know ahead of time when the annual survey will take place, because then the nursing home would prepare for them. And the inspectors would not really get a realistic picture of what the day-to-day life is like in that particular facility. So let me give you some background so you can understand what goes down during an annual survey. Understand, nursing homes are required to follow state and federal regulatory rules. And these rules are set out in a book. And when the inspectors come into the nursing home, they're looking to see if the facility is following those rules. And if they are, no problem. But if they aren't, well, then that could be a big problem. And look, these state investigators, they're thorough. They go through resident charts, they check the care plans, they look at physician's orders, they talk with residents, and they talk with staff members. They also carefully walk the halls. They check outlets, they watch the food service people to make sure that the food is prepared and stored and that the kitchen's clean. I mean, they're thorough. And if they find a problem, the facility could be issued what's called a citation for that problem. And each citation is then written up in a document called a survey, and that identifies the regulation, the violation, and the facts behind the violation. And look, these surveys are not very fun for the employees. More than likely, they know they're going to be watched on everything that they do. And it's a lot of pressure. They want to get everything right, but inevitably, state inspectors will find some problems. And the more problems they find, the bigger potential problem for that facility. Anyway, let me give you a microcosm of how the annual inspection takes place. And we'll start with the regulatory rules that I mentioned. One of these federal regulatory rules is 42 CFR 483.25B. And by the way, the state inspectors, they use shorthand references for these rules. This one is called FTAG 686. Anyway, the regulatory rule states, based on the comprehensive assessment of the resident, the facility must ensure that a resident who enters the facility without pressure sores does not develop pressure sores unless the individual's clinical condition demonstrates that they were unavoidable. Now, as the state inspector is reviewing the charts, he looks at the chart for resident 1. This is resident 1. Resident 1 arrived at the facility several months ago and had his daughter and his grandchildren with him. And within a few days of his arrival, the nursing staff is required to do a full assessment of him. And they do this so that they can prepare his care plan, which is a document that identifies what his needs are and what the staff is to do to meet his needs and the goals that they have for him. Now, here's the thing about resident one. He's not able to walk, so he's either in bed or in a wheelchair, and that makes him at risk for developing pressure sores, which is what most of us would call bed sores. When the nursing home employees create his care plan, they know about the federal regulation that I mentioned. A resident who enters the facility without pressure sores is not to develop pressure sores unless his condition demonstrates that they were unavoidable. So his care plan is going to be clear that he is at risk for developing bed sores and that they are to take measures to prevent the bed sores. Now, some of those measures are to reposition the resident every 2 hours and to make sure that he has a cushion in his wheelchair when he's in his wheelchair. Now, having seen Resident 1's care plan, the state inspectors now will look through Resident 1's chart to see if the nursing home did what they were supposed to do to make sure that he didn't develop the bed sores. When the state inspector reviews the nursing home documentation for Resident 1, he then finds that for those several months he's been a resident, the documentation doesn't reflect that the nursing home did everything they were supposed to do. There is very little documentation of repositioning him, and certainly no documentation to reflect that he had been repositioned every 2 hours for every day that he had been a resident. And there's no mention of him having a cushion for when he's sitting in his wheelchair. So what does the surveyor now conclude about Residence 1 residency? Well, surveyors now know that when he was lying in bed, he was in the same position most of the time, and that is putting pressure on his lower back. And when he's in his wheelchair, there was no cushion, and this also puts pressure on his buttocks area. And as the state inspector reads further, he finds that Resident 1 developed a bed sore on his low back, and it continued to worsen until it reached its worst stage possible, which is stage 4, and that means that it's all the way down to the bone. Now, the nursing home documentation reflects that eventually the resident was sent to the hospital and he was diagnosed with an infection of the bone that is exposed by that stage 4 bed sore. And that infection is called osteomyelitis. And unfortunately, Resident 1 died from osteomyelitis a few days after leaving the nursing home. After reviewing the documentation, the state inspector talks with the director of nursing and other administrative staff about the findings that the state inspectors found during their investigation. And then, if they believe that they have found evidence that the nursing home failed to follow this regulatory rule, they will issue a citation identifying a violation of FTAG 686. And then they will lay out a factual basis that they found during their investigation to support that violation. Surveyors then complete a survey document where they identify all the violations that they found and the factual support for each violation. And these annual surveys can be located and looked at online for free at medicare.gov/nursinghomecompare. It's definitely a helpful tool for those who are looking at nursing homes for their loved one. All right, that's the annual survey process in a nutshell. Now remember, I mentioned that the annual surveys are different than the complaint surveys. And I've done a video on what happens during a complaint survey as well. So watch for that video. If you have a loved one in a nursing home, that video may help you learn how you can contact the state on their behalf should an event happen that causes them injury or death. I hope you found this information helpful.